All right, it's Fantasy Football Now. We're here again. It's Thidoff and Rink. We are in Fantasy Football Now on Fantasy Sports, powered by DSP Media. I'm the aforementioned Thidoff. He is the aforementioned Rink. Follow me on Twitter at That Happens. Follow him at Chad Ochocinco. Oh, I'm sorry, X, right? Are we doing X now? We have to call it X?
No, I don't think anyone calls it X.
I hope not, because I think it's stupid. We got to get to today, though. We're going to talk wide receivers for sure. But first, let's get some news and notes, Chad, that happened just in the last day or so. But the first thing was Alvin Kamara for the Saints. There was a report, Ian Rappaport is usually spot on with this. He came out and said he was expecting a 6 to 8 game suspension for Kamara for the incident that happened in Las Vegas where they beat somebody up, him and some of his group beat somebody up. So I think people probably, if they drafted after they got that news, whoever drafted Kamara, I bet got a steal, because now it comes down as 3 games. And there's no appeal, or it's 3 games. It's the first 3 games of the season for Kamara to be gone. So if you've had your draft from the time Rappaport put the news out until today, you got him at a great rate. 3 games, you're still going to draft him almost where you normally would, right?
I think so. I mean, he's going to get a little bump. I don't see him before the 5th round. And he was probably going in the 7th. So he'll get maybe a couple round bump. I mean, 3 games is still 3 games, but there's really nobody there that's gonna challenge him once he gets back. So yeah, if you got Kamara already in a draft, yeah, you got a huge steal, just for, he's proven in the past what he can do. He's huge out of the backfield with receptions. He's got an upgrading quarterback, and their schedule is not that great. So all signs point that the Kamara, being I would think maybe a low end RB1, but he's definitely, once he gets back in there, could be a solid RB2.
Weak division, very winnable division for them, and that's where it probably plays into it more. Is that they're going to play meaningful football the last 5 weeks of the season, so he will get more. The 3 games not the worst thing. It means less wear and tear on his body to start the season. I'm with you. I think that he's still got some value. Absolutely not an RB1. If I can get him an RB2, and good Lord, if I get him as a flex, I'll take it all day long, I think, for him. Other running back news, though, we know Jonathan Taylor hates the Colts, and the Colts don't really value Jonathan Taylor because he's not going to make much money. He's not going to make the money he should make this year. And they have come out and said, that they're not going to renegotiate his contract, even though he thinks he should be paid more. It's a huge mess out there in Indy. He's not practicing right now. They talk about putting him on the NFI list, the non-football injury list, for some kind of back thing they say he had before that he suffered in the offseason. But they went out and signed Kenyon Drake. And Kenyon Drake he was drafted in 2016 to the NFL. He does have a 10-touchdown season on his resume. It's just some extra insurance for them if things don't go well as far as Jonathan Taylor between now and the start of the season.
Yeah, and I think if you take out the Taylor Colts, saga,
right,
it would just look like a normal. Hey, the Colts are doing a pretty good job. Kenyon Drake's a nice backup. They don't really have a solid backup, but you throw in all the other stuff that's going on, it's kind of huge news. It's kind of like, all right, Jonathan Taylor, are they bringing him in just for spite now? Because that's both camps going. So it's a good move for the Colts. I still don't think it changes. If Taylor plays for the Colts, he's a guy you want to draft probably early second. I think he's kind of fallen out of end of the first round. If you're in a 12 team, I have no problem late first round, like 10, 11, 12, depending who's there. But he's now kind of going in that top end of the second, which I think is a huge value because he could end up, he's got the talent to end up being, RB1 overall, but obviously he could be a top 5 running back this year. But Drake, I don't think it's going to mess up a ton for Taylor's workload if he shows up.
And this is why we always say draft as late as you can. Look, Irsay made his comments about, if I died tomorrow and Taylor never plays again in the NFL, then you know what? No, the world still goes on. No one will notice, whatever. He just said, look, I think Irsay's a jerk, but it's true that the CBA was negotiated. That's all they're doing is going by what the CBA is. That's all they're doing on this is they are following what the CBA was agreed to, collectively bargained on by both parties. So it's too bad that the running backs or the ages of the running backs, the NFLPA didn't see this kind of thing happening. That's what's getting Jonathan Taylor and Barkley and Jacobs and those guys really like not that. That's why they're so devalued because of that. But it's the way it is now, and they have to live with it until the next CBA comes around. They can address it at that point. So I'm with you. I think Drake. If you can get Taylor though at that 10, 11, 12 spot, and look, I'm not usually a big guy with handcuffs, Chad, but if you get Jonathan Taylor, I think you might have to overdraft Kenyon Drake just as a precaution.
Maybe I just, there's, I don't know. I think you can, because I think by the time you end up drafting Kenyon Drake,
right,
you've got most of your team set. So it's not a bad insurance policy to use one of those last picks on Kenyon Drake.
Right. Hall of Fame game occurred. Browns beat the Jets. They had the lights went out for a while that caused things to. And by the way, if you're a Uverse customer like I am here in Columbus, you don't get NBC anymore because there's this big dispute like they always do. So I had to stream it on Peacock. But most of the skill position players in this game probably won't make the team. I know there's offensive linemen, defensive linemen, other rotational players will make the team, but the Browns last night, their third string quarterback is what they were trying to figure out right there is who was going to be. But by and large, the Zach Wilson thing, him because of what his future, his like past has been with the Jets and everything. But by and large, you're not going to see a lot of skill position players out of this. But nonetheless, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the UCLA quarterback, looked pretty good for the Browns last night.
Yeah, I started watching it because I was on NBC, so I started watching it, and then I realized like I didn't like watching Zach Wilson in real games. Why am I watching here? And then DRT wasn't starting, so I ended up watching highlights of him because I saw his stat line.
Right.
It was one of those things where I remember for rookie drafts, like, dude, if he falls somewhere,
yeah, I
think he could be a player. Like, he was good at UCLA. Again, he can run. He's just going to, I think he's behind Watson. So, I mean, they're going to let Watson go. But I just feel bad he's not in a better situation where he can play. But there was nothing real. That was the only reason I was really watching to see what he looked like. But you're right. Even that rookie that the Jets took, he looked average. But, if he makes it, I think they'd still take Michael Carter if he's still there. I can't remember if he's still with them. I think he is.
Yeah, he is.
So I think they would take him over. I don't, so he'd end up being the fourth running back special teams guy. So it was, like I said, it's fun. It was good to have football on.
Good to have football.
It was like, oh, this is so exciting.
For me, Chad, it was chilly in the fall. It was comfort food last night. It's all it was. I know there's a lot of bad football played, and there were so many penalties. I don't know how many there were total. God, there was double-digit penalties for sure.
Yeah.
And I will tell you this: I did not put enough out there to like jeopardize my lifestyle or to buy a new house. Either way,
right?
But I did have a 2-team parlay: Browns on the money line at -110. In the over 33.5. So I felt good about that, and that came through. So I am officially 2-0 in my football bets so far this year. So that's a big thing.
That's huge. Yeah. And it's like I said, if you're betting on preseason football, you are a degenerate, sure, but you are kind of degenerate. I did a little bit last year, like that DFS preseason.
Right.
And it's such a weird thing, but like it's football, man. You
right.
Put a little money on it. At -110, it's you're gonna double your money, break even. It's not bad. So
but after I made the bet, I saw that Robert Saleh was 5-0-1 in his last six preseason games taking the Jets. That kind of scared me a little bit, and I thought about pulling it back or hedging. I was like, no, let it ride. It's preseason. We'll see what happens. All right. We've done quarterbacks. We've done running backs. Let's talk some wide receivers now as far as draft strategy goes. And it's changed dramatically in fantasy football, where it used to be in the first round. I mean, you were taking running backs probably if you're in a 10-team league at 7, 8, 9 running backs go in the first round. But now as we've evolved a little bit in PPR and the way offense has gone, and now the fact that there's not a whole lot of 3-down backs anymore in the NFL, there's no more Walter Paytons, Emmitt Smiths, not many of them, Adrian Petersons, not many of those left. Wide receivers are getting the call in the first round to the point where now it's almost flipped to where you might see 6, 7 receivers go in the first round of PPR. I think the consensus number one wide receiver across the board is Justin Jefferson, right?
It is. Pretty much everybody has Jefferson. I saw a guy who I like his content because he kind of goes against the grain, and he really looks into, going against the consensus. But he just I could just tell he kind of seems like a jerk. So that I don't like about him. But I really like his content because he put Jamar Chase as one.
Okay.
Because his thing was Chase, he missed games last year and still was like a wide receiver 12 or 15.
Right.
So, but I think those two it's Jefferson one pretty much. And he seems to be the 101 more often than anybody else that I see in these drafts. So it's not even, it's usually not even close. I just like if you're going one Jefferson. And I have no problem with that. He has shown he is just an elite receiver. He's in a good offense that have all the things you want if you're taking a wide receiver in the first round. There's some things you want with target share, points, passing yard, like all the stuff. And the Vikings are one of those teams that they do that. So Jefferson at one, no problem. And then you're looking at Chase is a close second, because you got to remember he did miss time last year and he still put up solid numbers. And that's another offense where they can move the ball. It's an elite offense. He's an elite talent. So those two are 1-2 receivers, and I don't think anybody anywhere in the industry is going to argue that.
And then after that, you got a bit of a drop off because you've got some guys who have quarterbacks in question or injuries on their own in question. I've seen some people put Cooper Kupp in a PPR league above Jefferson and Chase. I've seen that. I don't agree with it, but just because of what a great season Kupp was leaning towards last year before he got hurt. The problem is Kupp got hurt again. And I know he's supposed to be ready for week one. He should be fine for week one, what everyone's saying, but he does have now an injury history, injury stigma with him. And not to mention the fact you got Matthew Stafford, who great in the Super Bowl year, great for a lot of years in Detroit, really sucked last year, injured, and who knows what they're going to do if they fall out of contention. Will they make some other deals? But, not that football doesn't work like baseball or basketball, the trade deadline where they're moving guys. Typically, it's harder to make trades in the NFL. But nonetheless, you got to keep that in mind, though, when it comes to Kupp. And is Kupp third for you, or do you have him down further if you're drafting today?
I had him third for a while. The injury didn't really change it, but if you look, he's only had two 1,000-yard seasons in his career, and it's mostly because he can't stay on the field.
Right.
I also think the Rams are going to probably try to slow the game down, run the ball more. Akers is now two years removed from that. I think they're and then Stafford just turns the ball over a ton. So I think they're going to want to try to control the ball, try to win some ugly games. So Kupp, I think I have him now at 4. I would put Hill at 5 or at 3, just because I think he's kind of more electric. And I think the offense is going to be more pass heavy than the Rams. So I would flip flop those two.
Right.
Although I think I would take them both late first. I still think there's the running backs that are kind of there. I think it's Chase, Jefferson. You can throw Kelsey up there when we talk about tight ends as the guys that are non-running backs to take in the first half of the first round. But I think, and we'll get to this when you look at the second and third round receivers, why I'm like, if I don't get Jefferson or Chase, then if Kupp or Hill fall 10, 11, 12, then I'm okay with that. But
then you come back on the wheel, get somebody else early on again in the second.
Yeah. And again, if you're going zero running back and that's your strategy, then Kupp, Hill are the only two other really receivers I would take in the first.
My concern with Hill is just the health of Tua, because Tua was great last year until he got hurt. And he got hurt again. And all these things that went on with Tua. I mean, look, which is why we talk about quarterbacks with Tua. I'm not sure where to put him, and I'm not sure how much I feel like Tua's health plays a big role in the value of Hill for me. So if you believe Tua can stay healthy for most of the year, if you believe in that, then you've got Hill ranked up there third. If you're not sure, you might have Hill ranked 5th or 6th, depending on where your value is on that. But it's all tied into Tua when it comes to Hill for me, because I don't even know who the backup is this year. I have no idea who. I don't know. Bridgewater.
I was just trying to look it up, and I didn't want to be looking down. I don't know.
It might be Don Strock for all I know, but whoever it is, though, I'm not sure if they can even come close to the numbers that they have if Tua was there. Okay, let's go to the next tier now, more like the rounds 2 and 3. Who do you have next for you on that list? Now, we've got those kind of 3 to 4, and you said cut maybe down to 5, depending where you're at, but who's the next one you would consider?
I would probably – it's between two guys. It's between A.J. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Right.
I'm really high on Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think that offense, I think he's really good. So those two are ones that I would probably take next. And I think I'd rather have both of them instead of both Kupp and Hill. I think that's why I would just wait.
Yeah.
And I just think they're all like, I still think those two, and then a couple of guys we'll talk about, they're all kind of like right together. So if I can get an elite, if I get Barkley or Bijan or even Taylor, Chubb at the end of the first, and then get, St. Brown, AJ Brown, or even we're going to talk about Diggs and Lamb too here. Those 4 kind of are going off right at the beginning of the second round. You sometimes see one of those guys slide in the first, but it's usually just Diggs, but usually you don't. But those 4, I think, are just as good and have as good of upside as Kupp and Hill.
In the pregame
question marks.
On the pregame show last night for the Hall of Fame game, they had Matthew Berry on with Chris Sims, and Matthew Berry last year pegged Jalen Hurts is like the guy that could win leagues for you, kind of the guy to get and all this. This year, he's saying it's Amon-Ra St. Brown is the guy. And he talked about, I think it was since the end of the week 8 of 2021 or something to all through last year. I think he had the most catches or something on those points. Barry loves him also. I also love him. I think he is the next guy for me. And as a matter of fact, I might put him third behind Jefferson and Chase as far as my confidence level in him. And what I also love is the fact that I used to pay attention to this a lot when Peyton Manning was with the Colts. I love the fact that he plays a lot of games in domes. I think Matthew Berry pointed out last night, 8 of his last 9 games this year on the schedule are in domes. And so I love that because Jared Goff does like throwing the ball around now. He seems more confident. I got St. Brown next, and then I probably would put A.J. Brown after that. But St. Brown for me, I think he's third for me, honestly. And I'm telling you guys, I know we're going to draft against each other, but I don't think it'll affect you and I where our picking in the league.
Well, I think this is his 3rd year, so I think he's still protected. No,
they could protect him. He's got the guy in our league's got somebody else he can protect too, though.
Oh, okay.
I think so. That's what I was looking at. But anyway, St. Brown, though, is a guy I love after Jefferson and Chase. And then now you're talking about who's the next guys you got on your list.
Diggs and Lamb,
yeah. The Diggs thing, I'm not really scared about what happened last year in the playoff game and the little flare up in camp this year, what was going on in the OTAs and all that. That doesn't concern me too much. I'm more concerned they fizzled out the last couple years into the season. Is Josh Allen if I believe in Josh Allen more than Jalen Hurts, then I believe in Diggs. If I believe in Jalen Hurts more, then I like Brown more. That makes sense.
It does. And I think a lot of it too is with Dable left. And so that, I think he was a huge part of what made Allen Diggs work so well. And I still like the offense. I still think they can be electric. It's just, and Diggs is good. There's no question about it. It's just, I prefer those other 2 guys. Like you said, all the stuff with St. Brown. I think AJ Brown, I think the Eagles just are gonna roll everybody and score. And he looks so good last year. Yeah. And he's got the continuity there and that kind of stuff. And then you look at CeeDee Lamb. He's another one that he's an elite talent. He's obviously the team's number 1 option in the passing game. Mm-hmm. It's just Dallas is just always kind of a little weird. Yeah. With Dak, McCarthy, and now you figure, what's the run game going to look like? So I still think he's still a early 2nd round pick because I think he's going to get the targets. He can score. I still think Dallas is going to move the ball. So those 4 are the early 2nd round guys. But I'm like you. I do prefer St. Brown and AJ Brown over those two.
For the loyal viewers and loyal listeners, he said Dallas was weird, not goofy.
Not goofy.
Big difference there. There's a huge difference between those. The way Chad views weird and goofy. Okay, let's go to the next. Look, the next guy for me, a guy I like a lot this year. It shows that it's all dependent on Aaron Rodgers, if he's the old and not the older Aaron Rodgers. How about that? But Garrett Wilson, I think, is in line for a big year this year. I know that Rodgers came out and called him like a Devontae Adams type player, which is great. But Garrett Wilson's going to benefit. He had a decent year last year with crappy quarterback play. If Rodgers can be decent, Wilson can have a big year.
I agree, and he's usually he's creeping up to kind of hang with those other four we just talked about.
Yeah.
And if you look at Rodgers' career, he's got that one guy that he throws to, and it was Devontae Adams for all those years. Even before that, I was gonna say Donald Driver, but that's like way before Aaron Rodgers.
That, yeah, right.
It was, but he had that guy,
yeah.
And I think Wilson has the talent, and so I think that team is going to be able to run the ball well, which sets up play action, which is perfect. So I think they've already got a good connection. So Wilson is a big guy, and I think a lot of experts, a lot of folks in fantasy football love Garrett Wilson, and he's getting a ton of hype, and it's worth it. So he is getting that first half of the second, mid-second capital right now.
And a lot of value, especially if you're in a dynasty league, there's a lot more value in it there too with him because of how young he is. You mentioned Devontae Adams. Now he's got another quarterback, third different quarterbacks playing under him in 3 years. Played for Rodgers, played with Carr, and now he's with Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think he's got a lot of value in a PPR, but the yardage isn't going to be what it usually is for him, I don't think, because Garoppolo just does not throw the deep ball with the accuracy or with the frequency that Rodgers and Carr did.
Yeah, I mean, I still like Adams. Adams is just an elite talent.
Yeah,
but it's that of all the offenses, we're going to talk about some of these other guys. The Raiders are way down there, so I just don't think the opportunities are going to be there. I think they could be some 3 and out. So I just don't think, like you said, the yardage, which then obviously means his touchdowns will probably be a lot less than they were before. So if almost all these other guys to talk about, I kind of prefer. If Adams is sitting there mid-third, I would probably take a chance on him depending on my roster is, but I don't think I would take him in the second.
Then we got other guys that are like number 2s on their teams, guys like Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, Devonta Smith. Those guys are all number 2s on their team. And so you've got to, if you believe in those guys, you believe they're going to be a pass-happy offense. It's going to score a lot of points. And out of those 3, I think I like Waddle the most, but it wouldn't surprise me if Higgins or Smith overtook him. But I think Waddle's probably the guy out of those 3.
Which is weird because you didn't like Hill because of his quarterback situation.
I know, but I know, but I'd rather take a risk on a number 2 receiver than on a number 1 receiver.
Right. Yeah. And Waddle is so good. Like he just finds the end zone.
Yeah.
And Hill takes up, he gets a safety coming over because he's so fast. So Waddle's got a lot of room. And Tua is not known to be throwing the deep ball. So I think a lot of checkdowns. Waddle is great. I do like Waddle. I think I'm with you, though. Of those 3, I think Waddle is my favorite. As much as I like T. Higgins and I think the Bengals offense, but I still think Dolphins are going to try to air it out and run a faster offense. And I don't think they're going to be ahead like the Bengals could be. So I think there'll be a lot of shootouts. So I like Waddle, and then I probably like Devonta Smith just because he's paired with that Eagles offense, which is just going to score a ton of points. And then I think Higgins would be 3rd, and that's kind of like in order of how those guys are getting drafted. There's another guy we'll talk about, I think, next that's actually getting drafted ahead of most of these guys now.
Let me ask you about Waddle, though. If they sign Dalvin Cook tomorrow, does that change your view of Waddle or Hill at all?
No, I think they'll just be able to run the ball better.
Right.
With a guy like Dalvin Cook there, or even Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette. I mean, even Zeke, I think they'd be able to run the ball better, which is just going to help the passing game. Because I think if you can play action with Tua, even kind of roll him out a little bit, not run him, I think that's when he's at his best. So I think Dalvin Cook would just help the passing game.
Helps him get more into the red zone opportunities then also, which also then leads to potentially more red zone targets for these guys. All right, who you got next on your list?
A former Buckeye, Chris Olave. He's getting a lot of love because I think he's going to be the number one for that Saints offense.
Gotta be.
And he looked good last year. And I know if you didn't watch a lot of Ohio State football the past years, like he was so good. Like him, Wilson, JSN, those guys are just watch them. And then you got Marvin Harrison Jr. coming. Like these guys are just good receivers with just how they run their routes, their hands, getting 2 feet in bounds, stuff like that. So I really like Olave because he's going to be the number one on that Saints team.
Yeah.
And he got an upgrade in quarterback, so I really like him. And I would take him after Wilson. I would take, I think, Olave next. And then it'd be going into the Waddle, Smith, Higgins.
Yeah, I think you're right. If Wilson and Adams are off the board, I'd go Olave. Michael Thomas is all gung-ho about coming back. He signed a 1-year, $10 million prove-it deal before he goes into free agency. And so he'll be motivated to play after playing like 10 games in 3 years, whatever it is. But that doesn't change the fact that Olave put up great numbers last year with Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton and what's the tight end guy, Hill, right?
Yeah.
He put up great numbers with those guys throwing to him. So, yeah, Carr, no matter if you love Carr or hate Carr, you've got to admit he's an upgrade over what they had last year.
Yeah, and if you look at what I heard someone talking about it with Carr there, Carr over Dalton, Carr is better at the deep ball. Mm-hmm. He's more accurate, and he is better at the red zone. Like, if you look at Olave stats, he didn't have a whole lot of red zone targets.
Right.
And that's something Carr does much better than Dalton, which I think most quarterbacks do everything better than probably Andy Dalton at this point. But that's going to help Olave in just those two areas alone.
So then you get to the kind of the trinity of Metcalf, Samuel, and Cooper, and also then you've also Calvin Ridley in Jacksonville coming off his suspension last year for the gambling situation. And he's looked good so far in camp, it sounds like. And look, if you're giving me Metcalf, Samuel, Cooper, or Ridley, I think I'm going Ridley, Chad. I like, especially if I'm a Lawrence guy. I don't know how much you play into the to get the quarterback receiver combo, to stack and all that. But I've got, if I'm a Lawrence owner, I've got Ridley slightly higher than those guys. But even so, I think I've got him higher. I think I'd rather have him than Metcalf, Samuel, or Cooper.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with you. I love Ridley.
Yeah.
I know he's been out for a year, but I think sometimes they make too much. I think if you're a quarterback, sometimes I think that's a little bit because you
and a running back.
And a running back, yeah. As a receiver, like I don't think it's that much. He's already in camp. He's getting the reps with Lawrence. And I mean, if you're looking at him, I think Metcalf, if you're just in a bubble, I think Metcalf's probably the most talented of all those receivers. And then I put Ridley second. Metcalf's not in as good of position with all the other things that go on in Seattle. But I love Ridley this year, and he's starting to slide up more and more. Like you're going to end up having to take him in the third, and it's probably going to be early third. I doubt he slides into the second round,
right?
But I think you're going to have an early pick, and I have no problem with that, whether you're a Lawrence owner or not. And I do enjoy having that QB, and it's only 4. It's just great when they connect. It's just like, but I used to draft more that way, but now I don't. If it happens, great. It's more for DFS. That's really where you want that kind of stuff. But yeah, I like Ridley the best. And then it's kind of weird. I kind of like Samuel just because they use him so often. Mm-hmm. And when he's on the field, he can just do so much. And I do like Metcalf also, but he sometimes in their game flow, it is not going to get the kind of targets. But at least, with Samuel, at least, he's probably going to get 3 rushing attempts at least a game.
Yeah, we're talking about Deebo Samuel, by the way, not Curtis Samuel.
Yeah, it's not Deebo Curtis Samuel. Deebo. Yes. Yeah. So, of that, I'd be hard, but Ridley, Samuel, then I'd probably go Metcalf. I do like Amari Cooper. I think he's kind of getting slept on. He could be kind of a nice value end of third, probably maybe in the fourth, just because I think people just assume the Browns are going to run the ball.
Right.
I think that they might try to throw the ball more. They just picked up another receiver that we'll talk about later on. So they do have some weapons there, and Cooper's always been a solid, like he's just one of those guys as a wide receiver 3, he's great because he's just going to be pretty solid, and he's not going to really hurt you a lot of weeks.
He's never going to have a 2-touchdown, 150-yard game. It'll be steady. Now you get some of the mid-round guys, and you've got, when you get to this point, usually it's guys who have got an injury history or a new quarterback situation, inconsistent quarterback. You're not sure what's going to happen. But you got guys like Keenan Allen. You've got Terry McLaurin, who knows is throwing to him this year, right? Sam Howell, I guess, will be the quarterback. It sounds like DJ Moore with the Justin Fields conundrum. DeAndre Hopkins with Tannehill. You've got Christian Watson with the new quarterback, Jerry Jeudy with the what came off last year. All these guys, Drake London, Mike Williams, injured also. So when you start looking at those guys, I mean, I hope they're not starting for you every single week this year, right?
No, most of these guys, I think, are going to be your flex. I would hope so. At the minimum, wide receiver 3, and that's, if you got two pretty good studs, you got 2 good running backs. But I really don't like a lot of these guys, so that's why I'm trying to get some of these receivers earlier. Of these guys, there are 3 guys that I kind of really, really like, and it would be Christian Watson. It's Jerry Jeudy. And it's good time Mike Evans.
That's a good reference there. I like it. Dino Mike. That's a good one there. Mike. Yeah. I think I agree with that there. The Mike Williams and Keenan Allen both always scare me because I feel like they're going to go down and miss games at some point. Now, granted, if they're your flex or if they're your number 3 receiver, whatever it is, then it's not so bad. But if you've loaded up with other positions early, but you shouldn't, we both recommend that you shouldn't have to rely on these guys to be your number 2 receivers every single week. We agree you should load up on receivers early and pick up your running backs almost later on most of the time in this. But by the time these guys are on the board there, it's a situation where you don't want to have to count on them on a consistent basis just because you don't know what you're going to get out of them or how many games you're going to get out of them too.
Yeah, I mean, like Keenan Allen's in a great situation. If he can stay healthy, I mean, he's 31 now, so he's getting a little bit older for receiver. Like, he was a PPR machine, and that team's going to throw the ball. And Mike Williams, the problem with Mike Williams is he has 3 amazing games all year, but you don't know when to start him. And a lot of times, a couple of those are on your bench. Yeah. And I don't like that. And again, with McLaurin, DJ Moore, it's like I just don't think the production is going to be there. And Mike Evans is one of those other guys where it's just he's been so consistent like forever. And I want to go on a rant here for a minute because I heard a couple people on ESPN that are newer. I think ESPN and even the one guy just got hired on fantasy talking about contract year players, which is one of those things like if guys in a contract year, is there a little bump? And I say, right. I think it is if it's a guy that is like MVS or some like a Kenyon Drake where it's like, hey, if I have a great season, I can get a thing. So the 2 people that he and the other person, they did a little thread. I think they were probably talking about on one of their shows or something. The 2 people he said to watch out for these contract year players, Mike Evans and T. Higgins. Mike Evans, who has been the most consistent receiver for the last decade in the league. Sure. And T. Higgins, who is a wide receiver 2 on one of the most prolific offenses in the league and would be a number 1 receiver in half of the other teams in the league. So you're telling me to watch out for those 2 guys? Hey, thanks a lot. Guess what? Pat Mahomes, good. It's ridiculous. Take
a chance on Josh Allen this year.
And then he had another tweet. I'm not going to call him out unless we want to have we maybe later on once we get a little bit more established, get a feud war going on with some ESPN guys. But he had a tweet later about eight players to look out for, 8 running backs to look out for, and he had, Nick Chubb was on the list. I'm like, get out of here.
Yeah, you're right. There's some receivers.
It's not even that he had Nick Chubb on the list. He had Nick Chubb, and he was the only one that had the eyeball emojis next to it. Like, oh, Nick Chubb, never heard of him. He's just been a stud forever.
I think that I'd put Rod Tidwell on that list, right? Show me the money, right? Is that Rod Tidwell's out of that was?
It is Rod Tidwell. Great reference.
He was playing for a contract in the big game against Dallas on Monday night. That was
all
huge.
You need, man.
Yeah, something like that going on.
Yeah. So that whole group, it's just there's a lot of question marks. Again, you don't want to talk about it. Wide receiver 3, but I would prefer all these guys as more of a flex option.
A guy I like also this year to bounce back, and I'm not wearing the Steelers hat tonight, but Deontay Johnson had way too many targets last year to not score. I don't know, NFL record, I think, for most targets without scoring a touchdown in a season. And it's got to just mathematically get better this year. I think that's where you get value. People just look at like last year's stats and look at the numbers. You think, oh no, I'll pass it. I think Deontay Johnson bounces back this year. Second year with Kenny Pickett. I think that will help his cause. I'm not saying go out there and way overdraft him, but just later in the draft, if he's out there and you're looking for a decent guy to grab as a part-time starter or a flex guy, I think he's got value still.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, and I figured you would because you're the Steelers guy. I like him and Pickens, but Deontay Johnson, I think, is one of those guys where he's like an Amari Cooper, but you can just get him like 3 or 4 rounds later. Yeah. And I think that Pittsburgh offense is going to be a little bit better this year. Mm-hmm. Johnson's just he's consistent, so he's a good late round. That's the kind of guy you want in your flex. I can put this guy in my flex, going to give me 8, 10, 12 points, just not give me a 0. And Deontay Johnson's that way. And you got to look at that too. Like, he did not score a touchdown last year with all those targets.
It's amazing.
All that stuff is kind of like that 1 year where Calvin Johnson got tackled inside the 2 like 6 times in 1 year. Right. Yeah. Like, all that stuff just bounces out, and he's too good. Tomlin's too good. So yeah, he's kind of a nice sneaky guy to really kind of target late and really over most of these other guys that have so many other question marks.
So let's look at the rookies now. There's 3 specific rookies that have got vastly different situations. You've got Jordan Addison, who's going in there. They got rid of Adam Thielen in Minnesota. So Addison, who had a great college career, will be the number 2 receiver to the aforementioned, obviously, Justin Jefferson. You've got Jack Smith and Jigba will be the number 3 guy, essentially, in Seattle. And you've got the 2 receivers they have there right now with Lockett and Metcalf. And then you've got Johnston, a number 3 guy with the Chargers, Quentin Johnston, behind the often injured Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And they've all got different skill sets. Johnston, I don't think Johnston has the most upside, but I think he's got because of the injured guys in front of him, he's got a real chance to play some meaningful snaps for them. JSN, just because he's such a great route runner, precision route runner, great hands that people have been raving about for years. Addison, because of the volume he'll get and the fact that Jefferson's getting double teamed every single game. You got Hawkinson there. They've all 3 got it's tough for me to decide which one I like the most out of these 3.
Yeah, for fantasy wise, it is. I think if you're doing a football team, JSN's the guy. Or if your league does like points for first downs, maybe JSN, because on a 3rd and 3, a little slant to him, he's going to get it and get a first down. I think I like Addison the best, just because I think the Vikings, that system's pretty well set. They're moving on. If anything would happen to Jefferson, Addison slides into that number 1. Yep. I think I do like Quentin Johnston next for fantasy, even though I think he's probably the worst receiver of the 3.
Right.
Just because Williams can't stay healthy. Allen's getting older, can't stay healthy. He's a freak. Only like 6'4". I mean, he's big, and San Diego throws the ball a ton. So I think
so does Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah, and so does Los Angeles. Yeah, so exactly. Either one, if he's playing for either of them, whatever. So thanks for pointing that out. Yeah,
he's got the best quarterback though, the 3, right?
He does by far. And I think he's probably in the best situation just because he could also be a number 1 quick, and they just throw the ball a ton. They throw it to him, but I like Addison. Just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because I think he's going to probably at least early on get more targets, and you never want to like rely on a guy that has to rely on someone getting hurt, because that may not happen. Where Addison's going to be on the field, Addison's going to be on the field probably more snaps than the other 2, because the other 2 are wide receiver 3s. But with Addison, you got Hawkinson that kind of can mess him up.
That's where you'd rank them for this year in Dynasty, right? Addison. Well, in Dynasty, would you put JSN ahead of Johnston, or would you still go Addison? Yeah,
I would put JSN ahead of him, because I think Lockett's he might be a contract year player, but I think he's getting older. I think he'll slide out. I don't know if they'll pay Metcalf. And so I think JSN I think he's the better receiver of them all. And so I think just long term, JSN's the guy you want, but I still like Addison.
I'm not sure on Zay Flowers, only because, and I normally don't like doing this, but if you look at the history lately of Baltimore receivers, you've got Rashad Bateman, who can't stay healthy. They trade away Hollywood Brown. You bring in OBJ. Lamar Jackson gets hurt. Lamar Jackson gets hurt again. They can't keep a running back healthy. I don't know what the hell to expect out of this Ravens offense. So I'm not out there seeking Zay Flowers out.
I'm not either, because Andrews is really the only receiving option I want in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Bateman may be a late round flyer, but I really don't want Flowers at all, because even if there's injuries, I just don't think that teams, they know they say they want to throw the ball more.
Right.
I don't know if they want. If it is, it's going to probably go through Mark Andrews. So I really don't want a whole lot of Flowers this year, and even really for Dynasty.
Before we get out of here, let's I know because we're up against as far as time goes, but is there a couple upsides guys you're looking at, guys you think you could probably get good value on in drafts that you're liking, where they're falling in the in your mock drafts?
Yeah, the one guy I want to talk about is Elijah Moore. I think he's in a good spot. He put up some decent numbers in New York with Zach Wilson, and being the number 2 in Cleveland. I think he could be sneaky late round guy that could be very productive. And then I think you kind of want to take a chance on a Kansas City receiver. You just don't know. I know it's not MVS.
Yeah.
And then you got a rookie in Rachaad White, and then you've got Justin Ross, who had all the hype coming out of college, had a horrible injury, but now he's looking good. So, and then Tony's got the injury. So one of those guys, I don't know. Like there's not too many once you get this deep. Jahan Dotson, I think, is probably it. Like if you're looking to get a guy, because I think he's just talented.
He finished really strong last year, and again, you got to believe. Then they made they're making what I call quarterback with Sam Howell, or if Jacoby Brissett and whoever it is, and he's probably the number 3 receiver. But he's gonna. I have no problem putting him above, Curtis Samuel as far as production goes this year. I think he's got too much talent there, to where it's you can't deny what he's got and what he's going to bring to the table on that one. So.
Right.
All right. So next week, kickers. No, next time we're going to do tight ends. We're not going to do kickers this year, as much as Chad might want to do them. We're not going to do kickers in this draft, or in this podcast. Maybe
I'll do some kicker shorts. I'll do some kicker shorts.
Kicker shorts. There we go. That's exactly what they're worth too. But yeah, the kicker thing though, and I'm going to say that. Watch this year, kicker's going to burn me. Somehow I'll get burned by a kicker, either in a championship week or a playoff spot type thing. But follow him on Twitter. He's at Chad Ochocinco. Follow me on Twitter. I'm sorry, X. There we go. At Fit Happens. This is Faithful Now, and we are on Fantasy Sports powered by DSP Media. Chad, let's do it again real soon, bud. All right.
Sounds good.